All right, how's it going, Thieves fans? We got a new episode of the ThievesTalk podcast going on right now. Um, we were able to get our first win this week. This was something that we talked about in the last episode, that this was a possibility that the Thieves could come in and beat a very up and down Miami Heretics team. And, you know, it wasn't best at times, but they were able to keep their composure and finish out the series. It definitely got a little risky. There were some moments where we thought that maybe there was going to be a reverse sweep inbound, but thankfully the boys were able to close it out in a round 11 S&D. We will get into more of that. I figured I will talk about a little bit of how the watch party went, since I was able to be there. And then when Nadeshotsburner is able to join, that's when we'll kind of talk about the match a little more, and be able to go a little more in depth on all of that stuff. So for now, we'll kind of keep that a little vague, and then we'll jump into that in just a minute. Cryptic, how's it going? The game was nuts. Like I said, I was lucky enough to be able to go to the watch party, and the watch party was super dope. I have now been able to go to both of them. Unfortunately, the first one they weren't able to win, but this time, like I said, even though it was really close, they were able to pull out a win, and it was super electric there. Like everybody, all these other Thieves fans, just like myself, who were able to show up and were watching the match alongside me and the rest of some of the Thieves members. It was just super cool, man. Like so many fans able to show up. I want to say they said it was like somewhere between like 75 to 100 people that showed up, all sitting in the compound. If you were watching the stream for the match, they did take a video to show like that the Thieves were doing a watch party, so that was on the stream, and it was super super cool. Got to talk to a couple other fans, and also got to talk to some more of the people at Thieves. Got to meet all the players. That was something that I got to meet at least Ghosty and Afro before at the last one, but now since they have made a roster change, I was able to meet Nasty and Crimp as well. So that was super cool. Got them to sign the scuff that I won from the last watch party, and now we got a full signature set up for the controller. So that's really cool. Now I just have to add more tape to it. I put tape on it because I didn't want to smudge the signatures. But yeah, whatever. We'll move on. But yeah, it was super cool. The guys, I'm sure, on the team were super super stoked to get a win, and then especially to do it with a lot of the fans there. Um, you know, I guess from what I heard, they had left their door open to the room where they actually play from. So I think they wanted to hear us fans sitting there like cheering them on and trying to hype them up, and hopefully it helped them. Hopefully it helped them kind of like get in the groove and really be you know really be kind of like ahead of the competition. Because like I said, there were a lot of up and down moments in the match. We started off really hot and then kind of like fizzled out a little bit. The second we had to go to a second hard point, that's where I knew it was going to be a little hectic. It was big to get our first hard point, and at that point I was like, all right, we have a chance to 3-0. But that control was just kind of where things turned a little bit. But like I said, boys were able to ice up, and they came out and they definitely seemed in a really good mood. Like I said, getting that win, first win of the major for them, and early on too, which I think is really big. And as we talked about in the last episode of the podcast, I think that will be really good for momentum for them, and I'm hoping that's true. Cryptic, the watch party looked insane. Yeah, dude. It Like I said, it was really dope. Get you on a flight over there? Yeah. I mean, obviously it's hard because it's only a 1 day event. You know, like I flew from Arizona since that's where I'm at, and you know, not terrible because it's only 1 hour flight. It's really not that bad, but you know, getting a flight from overseas, that's gonna be tough, dude. Like that's a long flight. Um, but if you ever happen to be in, I guess, California specifically, since they're in LA, for an extended amount of time, it would definitely be worth it to go. But um, for me, I would definitely say to just try and go to like a regular event, because then you at least have like a weekend. And I know, yeah, like I know you're not actually going to fly out for a 1 day event, but if you happen to be there and we're able to go, I definitely think it's worth it. Um, I don't regret going at all. Got to talk to, like I said, the players. Got to talk to Brandon, their GM, and spend some time with Double A. If those of you who don't know, he's the producer, the guy who films all of the content basically for LA Thieves YouTube channel, and does all the editing for the 0 to 100 series. So, um, give him some props. That's for sure. He does a really good job, and I know he's got a lot on his plate. And he does a really good job of what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, we can kind of go over just a little bit of the like the basics of this, and then we'll kind of like dive into a little more with Nadeshotsburner here. But so far, this is what's crazy to me. The Heretics are 0-4 to start off this major, which is wild. And the Thieves are 1-1, which is great compared to, you know, last major, based on how we finished. Obviously, I know, as we've talked about before, they do have a rough schedule, so things are not going to be easy. It's not going to be just like a walk in the park for these next matches. But I think this could be leading them in the right direction, and we'll kind of see why. Like I said, despite some of the ups and downs, I think you really have to just take that with a grain of salt. That this was, to me, one of the better series that they've played, like a series as a whole. Just by the way a lot of things played out, and I think I would have thought the same way even if they lost. So I think the fact that they were able to win makes it that much better. Let's look at the stats here, maps and modes. Um, we had a Karachi hardpoint. That was something going into it I thought was actually going to be pretty good for the Thieves. I guess I shouldn't say good, because so far they have not been a good hardpoint team. But out of all hardpoint maps, I thought this one was going to be the best one for them. So I thought that was a good pick. Karachi Search, I feel like the Thieves have been pretty good on Search. They've been pretty good on Karachi. Again, I thought it was a decent pick. The High Rise was where I was a little surprised. On the live stream, they showed that the team actually banned invasion control, which was a shocker to me. So that one threw me for a loop. I guess maybe with this new roster change, they're just not performing as they were before, and so they kind of had to switch up their control maps. But that was a big shock to me. Then we had the invasion hardpoint, which, again, like I said, we were getting into another hardpoint. That's where things were getting a little dicey for me. And then we finished it off on a terminal search and destroy, which I felt like played into the Thieves' favor a little more than maybe I thought it would. So that was really cool. Let's bring in Nadeshotsburner though. He's in the Discord. It'll be better to get both of us kind of chatting about this than me just continuing to ramble on. We're all good. Sweet. Okay. So yeah, the first hard point, like I said, it wasn't like a walk in the park. They were actually down for a while, and were able to kind of make their way back into it, and then were able to finish it off on the Cafe Hill, where Ghosty was able to use a streak, and it just kind of was impossible for the Heretics to get there. But uh, team wise, Kremp was really the only one I feel like that was like really struggling.
Yeah,
Which
he
he brought
struggled
it
pretty
back.
mightily.
Um, he started off really, really bad. Afro started off okay and then kind of slowed down. But Kremp started off super slow, but then was kind of able to pick it up toward the end, only finishing it at -3. Um, but Ghosty had himself a series, but he definitely had himself a map one, and I think that definitely helped kind of spark some things for the team. Same with Nasty here, going one with a 1.3 KD. That was huge as well.
Yeah, as I've got the game flow pulled up from the stream, and they had about a 30 to 40 point lead for most of the first set of rotations, and then they kind of fell behind in the first half of the second set, and then they really turned it on. They were down about 140 to 170, and then going into P4, and it was 145 to 210, and the final score was 250 to 215. So it's really nice to see some ice out of the boys, especially considering it's a new roster, first second game
Mm-hmm.
together on hardpoint. So I'm glad to see that we were able to put it all together for a good comeback at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it was funny because when I was at the watch party too, I had mentioned, especially after the hard point, that I've noticed there's kind of like a trend with Afro's, um, like, I don't want to say gameplay, but uh, kind of how he goes into a series, in that oftentimes his first map is a little slow, and then his search is where he kind of like brings everything back, and then going into the control, he just starts frying. And
Yeah,
I feel like
I
that's exactly what happened to start this series.
yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. It's frustrating to see that sometimes because like you don't want to start slow. And I think that thieves have they're like optic. They always seem to start slow.
Yeah.
And like I said, this first set of rotations on the Karachi was really nice to be up, but to I think because Kremp performed so, I mean he was bad for the first for 75% of the match.
Mm-hmm.
I mean I think he started 3 and 14,
Yeah.
so he's being overshadowed by Afro's being overshadowed by Kremp in that match, but you're right, like he still didn't perform the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really hope that moving forward, like we got a win under our belt, especially in hardpoint, like we can hopefully use that momentum, go back and watch the VOD, like figure out what's working and keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason, at least from some of the stuff that like I've heard, I think Afro is kind of like trying to play a little bit of a different play style than what maybe he's used to. And
Yeah.
so I think that, um, with that happening, I think that's kind of slowing him down. The comparison that I heard was, obviously not to the same extent, but kind of similar to what like Dashi was going through, where it was like he went from, people were saying he's like a kill whore, that he's, prioritizing kills, to being more of a, um, like a, not role player, but like an OBJ
He's now
player.
yeah,
Um,
he's now playing for the win.
and I think like that's where Afro is he's kind of in the middle of a shift, and so he's trying to get used to playing in a new style, um, to work alongside of Kremp, and so I think sometimes that will obviously weigh on him, but then if he's not playing great, I think sometimes that can weigh on Kremp, and I think if Kremp's not playing great, sometimes that can weigh on Afro. Being the sub duo, now you kind of have to adjust what you're doing based on how one guy is playing. Maybe if you have one guy trying to break and he's not getting a pick on his end, and now you have to go in and kind of hope you make a miracle play. um, I feel like that's something that we should start to see kind of get a little better. I feel like even though his stats were still negative, I do feel like overall both guys were picking it up. Like we said, I think it was just the slow start. Because both guys are good enough players to do more than what they're showing, and they prove that in other game modes as well. So I think it's just something that they're working on internally, or at least like Afro's working on internally. That once he kind of starts to get that figured out, I think that'll really help this hardpoint team or this team on hardpoint, because the fact that they won 250 to 215 with Kremp and Afro starting as slow as they did is really, really good for them.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope that instead of the mentality that like, okay, well, since Kremp is playing bad, or because whoever else on the team is stepping down a little bit in the respawn, that
Mm-hmm.
Afro doesn't feel like he has to overcompensate and start making hero plays. Like it's nice when it happens, 3-piece, 4-piece, that's crazy, but playing the fundamentals that they need to, hopefully that will bring it back to the the level of what it should be,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just even. But like having Afro step up and do his part helps Kremp, instead of Kremp just having to basically it especially that first half of that match, he caught sprinting so many times, just running with his head down. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a different level at CDL level, but Ghosty does believe in these guys, and Kremp is one of those people. Ghosty in the post game interview, he was like, that was the number one guy we wanted. He was absolutely ready to pick him up as soon as the matches were over after Major One. So it was good to see that like they wanted to go get him and they believe in him. So it is just going to take a little bit of time. And I think Kremp had the same problem on Boston. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
with our coaching staff, we can iron out those, not flaws, but maybe bumps, and we can figure out what we need to do to get him on the right page. Because, nobody had a bad series. Kremp had put a .87, which is not the best, but
Mm-hmm.
17k damage. He had more damage than 3 of the 4 guys on Miami. So he's dropping a .87, but they're shooting back together
Mm-hmm.
versus somebody like Eric Boom who's only dropping 12,000 damage. I mean, that's just not going to cut it.
Yeah. Um, let's get into this search. The search was definitely a lot more dominant than the hard point was. Afro, as we said, he had a huge search. Going 10-3 here, and Ghosty breaking even 5-5. Kremp had a solid bounce back as well, and Nasty had himself, another decent showing. Nobody going negative, which is really big. And if we can get to where we're able to win um, a hard point, and then we know we're pretty good on search. I mean, the control, even though we lost it 3-2, the control was back and forth the entire time. There's another world here where we win this series 3-0, and
Yeah, I agree.
I completely think that that's something that they can do in the future.
Yeah, I think the search was, absolutely clinical. It was not even close. There were some tight rounds, but I mean, everybody did their job. They're playing together, and they're shooting back, and it's nice to see. We had in the series, we had a total of 7 first bloods, and that's a recipe for success. In this 8 rounds played, we had 7 first bloods, so
Mm-hmm.
that's fantastic to see. That means everybody's on the same page, and their game plan in the lab is working. So it is a team like Miami that is kind of on the reeling end. They're 0-4 this major, so
Yeah.
I would really like to see, hopefully, against Minnesota. Like, obviously, Minnesota doesn't have their Game 5 ice right now, which I don't know what's going on with them, but hopefully we can see that against a team that does have a good search record and does have a good search team.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can put that together against a good team.
Yeah. I mean, is it Minnesota that we play next?
Yeah, we play them next weekend
Yes.
on the
Okay.
3rd on Sunday.
So I mean, this could be kind of like the perfect situation for the Thieves. They're able to get a tough fought win. I know some people were kind of like making fun of how like crazy Ghosty went after winning the first hard point. Um, but when you look at what this team has gone through, uh, like that really is a huge win and a huge victory for this team. And I think with them now winning a series, having a series under their belt, and having it early in the major, now if they're going up against this Rocker team, like you said, who they're not really finishing the series, maybe maybe the Thieves are able to get another win and they go up 2-1 before they have to go in and face some more of these like quote unquote like gauntlet teams, like these these squads that are just, you know, above everybody else basically. Um, I think that could be a really good momentum boost for them and something that they desperately need.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the point totals, obviously only top 8 make playoffs, but like we're only 20 points behind LAG for the 8th spot. We've dropped back down to 12 after Carolina's win today, and
Mm-hmm.
between us and Vegas, there's a 15-point difference. So hopefully we can get another win or two this stage and being winners. I think that's a big confidence boost for the boys. And
Yeah.
then from there, points on land mean more this season than in the last 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I really hope that we can set ourselves up for success moving forward. And I think that starts with what we saw in this match, which is good hard point, great search and destroy. We'll get to game 5 in a little bit, but I think we've got a really good squad now.
Well, and I think with them beating Heretics, now looking at some of their upcoming matches, they really don't seem like they're too far behind either because, like you said, I think with Rocker not really being able to finish a series right now, that's going to be a mental thing for them. Obviously, FaZe not going to be an easy matchup, but the Subliners did just beat them today. Subliners, I feel like, have been kind of up and down. I think they're kind of headed in the right direction right now. So, who knows how much that really tells us. But then we have Legion, and like you said, we're really not that far behind Legion. So anytime you can beat a team that we're pretty close behind is obviously going to be huge for us. And then after that, we have LAG, which, you know, again, I don't think LAG is necessarily a spectacular team, but
Yeah,
the history
I think
says it's going to be tough for us.
I think it can be said that Seattle looked horrible today. Their search is okay, but their respawns are worse than ours were before we made a roster change.
Mm-hmm.
And then Miami hasn't won a game since December, and LAG. I mean, you don't know who's going to show up on certain day when you're playing LAG. Fame's a good bright spot, but the rest of those guys are sometimes they're not even competitive. And then you have Carolina, Boston, and Vegas ahead of us, like you just said, like those are good teams. I think Carolina has a good chance to bounce back. And Boston just showed that they do have a good roster and ASIM pickup. And then I think Vegas is definitely a nice sleeper team with that Geo pickup. So I think that it wouldn't surprise me if we're fighting, you know, the 9, 10, 11 at 5, 6, 7, 8, because I think Rocker's solid, but with the bottom 3 of the top 8, like those teams don't feel competitive compared to the bottom 4, which is crazy to say. But when you notice that Miami made a roster change that doesn't really mean anything, Seattle made a roster change, whatever the heck's going on with Illy, we have no idea, but he
Yeah.
was their best player. And so, and LAG, like, I don't think they're going to make a roster change because they they don't they don't have a problem with talent. They have a problem with putting it together, and I think that they're going to try to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
But Vegas, Boston, and Carolina all made roster changes, including us, and I think that that's going to be the battle versus 6, 7, 8 is going to fall off.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. Um, I think like you said with Rocker, I think they're still a good team. And I think similar to LAG, like they have the talent. I don't think it's really a problem when it comes to talent. Like even their rookie lens is gross.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Lens is rookie of the year easily right now,
so
but we can get into the control.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting a little off topic here, getting too
Yeah.
ahead of ourselves. Yeah, so then then we had that high rise control. As I said, they banned invasion, which came to a shock to me.
hmm
Came as a shock to me, just because of how well we've been on it. But as
And
I
so
said before, with
I
this
think
new roster, you didn't really know how it would play in with them.
yeah, I think they played okay on it. They played decent on it with the couple mistakes that they made. Their defense is still good on invasion, but I think that, and Nameless talked about this on the desk with I can't remember which team, but this is the opportunity to expand your map pool. You want to
Yeah,
see where teams are at. You want to see where yourself is at, and Nasty has come in and he's been the guy in respawn that we wanted him to be. He was
yeah,
great in hardpoint. He was great in control. It was a close game in game 4 as well, and granted some crazy spawns, but
yeah.
Nasty has been a player that is pairing well with Dan, and I think that's really important. It's gonna move forward, when we move forward with that, it's gonna really help.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it looks like this one was Dan's worst map. Um, but you still had Nasty, like you said. He had a really good map, and Afro and Kremp really weren't too bad. Um, the I feel like I said, control is still. I feel like we're still good on control. I don't think that's out the window just because we lost one map. I think there were definitely some situations that you could argue could have been played out differently. Nasty had his cruise for a while and never used it. I know that was
Yeah.
something that I watched a little bit back from Octane watching the matches, and I know a lot of the guys like from the flank and all
hmm
that they were saying like in the moment, Nasty probably should have used a streak earlier,
hmm
and you know you can maybe even argue that in the round before that he could have used a streak. So it really is just like a couple little things here and there that could have been played out a little differently, and I think that map goes in a different direction. Anytime we can see Afro, Crimp, and Nasty all performing pretty well. Um,
I will say Afro started out this match 22-11. He finished 28-28, but he disappeared on this map set. He really kind of started getting put in the blender, getting the sprints, whatever you want to call it. Like
yeah,
this could have been a 3-0 high rise, and we go home 3-0. So I
yeah,
think that's just something that you when you go back and watch it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I just need to like hit the reset button. I need to not keep putting myself in that same scenario, because I mean he was frying. Like you said, he kind of started slow in the hard point and then got better in search, and
hmm
Gunny came back out immediately on control. So I think that just the small things you got to tune up, and then it's nice to not have like the Vegas effect where we have we're always competitive in control, and that's not a map that we're just going to give away.
yeah, absolutely. I think you also have to give credit to the Heretics as well because they definitely started turning up in like the middle of the control. They started
hmm
off uh, like just kind of how they were, like they weren't doing anything spectacular, but they weren't like terrible. They were just kind of like there, and the Thieves were kind of doing their thing to start it off, and then slowly, like you could kind of feel that pressure coming back from Miami, and maybe that's when Afro kind of started getting, maybe you could say put in the blender. I don't feel like it was that deep since he did start off well, but the tides were just kind of turning a little bit, and I think too probably losing that really close round, probably was a tough pill to swallow. Like
hmm
thinking that we could have won that round and we probably should have won that round. Probably came into their heads for the next round, but like I said, there you still have three guys in the positive.
And that's what I was just about to say. Is we talked about it last week. Is Dan has to do everything, and this, like you said, this was his first bad map, and it was still a 3-2 loss. Like
Mm-hmm.
if he plays slightly better or whatever, like still put up the 5,300 damage. Like this was a good team, good team loss. I guess is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. But Dan didn't have to put everybody in the backpack. Nasty had 57 engagements. Like we're seeing the teamwork start to come together. And like I said, if things go well, it's 3-0 in control.
Yeah. And, I think, as you said, this is a good team loss, in the sense that, like, as a fan, and I'm sure as a player, you would much rather be like competitive as a team and lose 3-2 than to not really be competitive as a team and just get stomped. Like, there's at least some improvement being shown there. And that was kind of like the biggest thing that I was taking away from this series in general. Was I definitely felt like they they showed a lot of improvement. And so for me, it was like, no matter how this series, like, finishes, the team definitely showed that they're making strides in the right direction. Um, and so it definitely makes me excited for future matches.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, excuse me, like you said, this is the best the team's looked in a long time, and it's great to see, and it's going to be great to build on. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited, and that we've got we I feel like we have the guys. I think that, everybody always wants to overreact immediately, like, oh, blow it up, get rid of whoever had a bad map.
Yeah.
But I think that we've got a great squad. We've got great team chem, and the guys, they want to win. You
Mm-hmm.
saw that, especially right after that first hard point. Dan screaming into the
Oh yeah.
headset. Like, we love to see that. So I think we can move on now and talk about this map 4.
Yeah. Um, we had a map 4 invasion here, losing it 250 to 223. Uh, when you look at the stats for the Thieves here, the fact that we kept it as close as we did, I feel like, is
Yeah,
kind of impressive. Because, as you said before, like, Ghosty, he's definitely the most consistent player on the team, at least so far. Maybe some things will change as time goes on, but so far he's been the most consistent player on the team, and he shows it here, and everybody else around him kind of had a rougher map, um, and I think Miami was just able to take advantage of it. I think they did look like they were kind of starting to heat up just a little bit towards the end. That's where they were able to get more of their time. Because, I mean, at one point it was almost a 100-point game, and I think at that point it was like, all right, we're going to a
yeah,
map 5.
yeah. I will say I am surprised Miami vetoed Rio. So
Mm-hmm,
I'm wondering if maybe these have looked good on Rio and scrims, and they didn't want to play him on it, because to me that is a map that should be Miami's bread and butter. That's a map that fits their play style. That's the Spanish style of COD where they just kind of cause chaos and go nuts. So
mm-hmm.
it is exciting to see that maybe teams are a little bit fearful of Thieves on that map. But yeah, the invasion, like, it was close at the end, but it really wasn't close past P4, P5 into the new rotations, because Kremp got 3 insane spawns in a row to
Mm-hmm.
to bring it back. We scored almost 80 uncontested points, which is great.
Yeah.
You want to see that, but those, I mean, it's impossible to read at a pro level. So it's one of those things that you don't want to have to rely on that to
No.
get back in the game.
I also think, you mentioned Heretics banning Rio. I think part of it too is they have been playing Rio and they haven't seen any success on it. So I
Sure.
think, you know maybe based off of the Thieves and how they have been playing Hardpoint, maybe this would have been a better opportunity for them to play Rio. Um, but I think it probably came down to that they weren't confident enough in it based on how they've been in other matches on Rio, and maybe there is an aspect that the Thieves are better at Rio than what we've been able to see. Is it was did they play a Rio last series, or have they not played Rio at all?
I want to say they played it against Optic, and it was pretty
Yeah,
bad.
that's right. Yeah, because I mean, like like I said with that match, it makes sense to me with Optic because they have a lot of fast paced players, um, and there's a lot of, I guess, like leadership with that team that
Hmm.
even in fast paced moments they can kind of slow everything down, and that's something that I feel like the Thieves kind of miss a little bit. So I think playing up against that caliber of a hardpoint team, who can play as fast as they do, just wasn't ideal. But with Heretics, it might have been a little different, based on, like I said, how they've been performing on Rio themselves.
Yeah, I just pulled up their last match against Vegas, and Eric Boom went 12-28 with a .43. So I think that they probably were a little uh, eager not to play that map.
Yeah, probably just decided to chalk that one up.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to highlight would be Nasty. Still putting out good damage, just kills not falling his way. You
Yeah.
want to see maybe a little bit more improvement from the AR on an AR map,
Hmm.
but overall, it was pretty difficult. They got put it in a pretty good break. They got put in the cycle of trying to break over and
Yeah.
over pretty easily or pretty early. So just stuff to fine tune, work on, fix the rotation, stuff like that.
Well, and even just hardpoint in general, it's something I noticed in their first hardpoint, as well as the invasion hardpoint, is they're still like slow to rotations. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a spawn knowledge thing. I don't know what it is exactly, but um, there's just been several moments where you're kind of sitting there and you're like, okay, why are we why are we playing for old, or why are we
Yeah, why are
not?
we pushing hold for 8 seconds?
Yeah, like it's a little confusing to me. So I don't, obviously I'm not in the comms. I don't know what their plan
Yeah,
is.
of
I don't
course.
know what their strategy is. Um, but it's a little interesting that that's how it is. You know, Again, I think this first hard point they played was probably one of, if not the best hard points they've played overall. Just based on the fact that they were winning a couple rotations, but they were also breaking hills, um, which we haven't seen much of either. So that was
Hmm.
big. But then with the invasion, like you said, they kind of had gifted spawns, at times, and were able to break that way. But that's not something you want to rely on. And if you're not really rotating early enough, it's gonna kind of bite you. You get lucky with a map like invasion.
Yeah, and also, we like you said, we can highlight Heretics a little bit. Like, Lucky went 29-15. That guy was shooting back. It's good
Yeah.
to see from their perspective, but the game was still only 27-point game, so it is something that you kind of tip your hat to. Like,
Hmm.
we were getting fried, but we made it really close. So and then that leads us into game 5, which was just an absolute banger.
Yeah, that that map was, man, talk about stressful. I was
Adrenaline rushing.
I was oh man, I hadn't eaten much, and I had a juvie when I first got to the compound, so
Yes. So take me through that. How was that being there, game 5? Obviously it goes to round 11, but like tell me the vibes, what's going on? Like
I
I'm sure it
mean,
was absolutely nuts.
when they started off, pretty good. Obviously the first round they didn't win the first round, but like after that they won a couple rounds in a row, and I think that was when everybody started to be like, okay, like we have a chance at taking this, and we were getting hyped up. You could definitely feel the energy, like, rise and fall as there were the ebbs and flows of the map. Um, but once they were up, it was what, 5-3. We were like, all right,
Yeah,
like
5-3
this,
curse coming
yeah,
coming
this
back.
this should be it. And then they won the next round, and it was like, oh shit, like this is
Yep.
not good. And
Yeah.
they go on to take it to around 11, and man, was I nervous for that round
Yeah,
11. But
just an absolutely tippable from Dan.
yeah, the second I saw Ghosty in that spot, I was like, as long as he does not peek his head until like they're in a position like getting ready to plant, like we win the round. There's
Yeah,
no reason we should lose this round as long as Ghosty stays alive in that spot. And he did exactly that. He stayed up. He peaked right as I don't know if it was Eric Boom. I don't remember who it was off the top of my head. Was like right next to Bomb, got that first pick, and then you had whoever it was behind Eric Boom like peek out to try and get the trade, but Ghosty just was able to basically like spray transfer and kill him as well. Before he ended up, I think he still ended up getting traded out, but he got the first two,
yeah, he got
which was
two and
huge.
tried to run away, and he even said in the interview, I think if he had just fired at all three of them, he probably could have got it.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, because
but
it's such a tight window that you don't have to transfer very far, so
mhm,
odds are you're really not going to miss that many bullets.
yeah, and you know, hats off to Dan. I mean, more 3K damage in the lobby, like that's
Hmm.
1,000 more than most players in there at 12-6,
Yeah.
dropping 2.0. Like he was absolutely gunning these guys, and it's just Dan is the guy. He's the diamond in the rough, the rock on our team, and it's amazing to know that every single series he's going to come out and perform at a top level.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I might get shit on for this, but I think he's top 10, if not top 5 AR. I think that any other team would love to have this guy,
Oh,
especially
absolutely.
considering how his comms are, how much of a leader he is at a young age. Like he is the guy, and it's amazing to see that he is going to show up day in and day out.
Yeah, I think especially when you look at him from the future building perspective, like like you said, he
I,
is a young player and he's as consistent as he is already. He's an IGL, and I would agree with you that he's top 10. Like he he really just seems to do it all, and he has such great knowledge for as young of a player as he is.
yeah. And as much as I love it, and it's great to see, we had to have Dan nearly break the damage record for this season to win a series.
Yeah.
So you just you want a little bit more teamwork overall. You know, obviously guys starting slow in matches, but
Yeah.
it's good to see a total team win. You know, coming down at the end, and everybody like Nasty getting that three piece was great to see.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
guys stepping up, not just kind of feeling like, all right, well we lost a map, it's over. You know, it's good to have some bounce back ice.
Yeah, and that actually, now that you mentioned it, that nasty three piece was electric. That was crazy. Um, obviously he gets the first two, and it's just like, holy shit, he did more than enough just by doing that. And then he slides over and gets the pistol kill to finish the round, to put us up to five rounds. That was
Yeah.
very big. Um,
And I want your opinion on this. Do you think, like, just from a mentality standpoint, like with these guys on this roster now, it
mhm,
felt like before, if we even got to that point or even in the searches, like it didn't feel like anybody was ever going to make that play. And it's nice to see Nasty, somebody besides Dan. It's
mhm.
nice to see Nasty just pop off like, hey, I can get a two piece, I can get a three piece, and we can get that. Excuse me, we can get this done. It does that feel, is that a similar feeling that you have with this roster now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, especially with Nasty, he has prior experience, being in the league, and obviously not that the other guys didn't, but while he was playing on London, like he was a beast on London. Like
Yeah,
the entire, I think it was 2 years that he played on London, he was a monster. Whereas Cammy has been good, but he's fluctuated a lot. I feel like Nasty was pretty solid, like that he was a damn good player, and it was really shocking to me that he didn't get a roster spot initially, and I think when we're just talking even gun skill, I think having somebody like Nasty alongside a Ghosty is huge. Um, because now, like you said, he is another player that does have the potential to pop a three piece or make these big time plays because he seems to be like comfortable in it.
Hmm.
Um, and again, there's been some fluctuation, but I feel like for the most part, this series was the most like consistent out of most of the guys. Like we had Nasty who had a pretty solid series besides maybe like one or two maps. Ghosty had a great series besides one map. Uh, Kremp didn't have the best series. He had a couple, I guess you could say, stinkers of maps. This one
Hmm.
being 1, 3, and 8. It's rough, but he did have a big kill on the round where they were planting and playing, and he was able to wall bang it to get them off bomb. That was a huge play. So I think, especially with like searches, that's something to keep in mind is that even though the stats don't say it's anything crazy, it's more of like a timely thing, and he definitely had some timely plays. And then Afro had a pretty solid series. Like we said, maybe besides that first and second hard point, which I actually kind of brought that up to him when I was there. I had mentioned the same thing as I did on the podcast of how he does really well in the search, and then the control is where like it seems like he's kind of in that flow. And even he himself said like he just needs to get the hard points figured out, and once he does, like he'll be good. And I completely agree with that. Um,
Yeah.
so he's
Uh,
aware of it, which is good.
I I I think Afro has the higher ceiling of between him and Joe. Personally, I think Afro, like Trey talked about it on the Breaking Point podcast, that like
Mm-hmm.
he thought Afro was going to be like the next Abuzi. Like that's how high his skill ceiling is. So I think
Really?
that you're right. Yeah. I he Trey said that he was probably one of the best players he's ever played with, and when they play together in Vanguard. So
I mean, that's
I
high
think
praise.
that is high praise. I mean, Trey's been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
So, like, to say that about a player is fantastic. And to have that player on our roster, I think Afro is, of him and Cammy, I think he was a little bit more consistent on that older roster.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and that's why I think he stayed on the roster, because you do see him show up in both searches and in the control. Like I said, he had a little bit of a down half on that second half of control, but 3 of the 5 maps he is at the top of the board, and
Mm-hmm.
that's great to see, and we want that. So I'm excited. I'm glad that he's shooting back and that this roster is finally gelling together. And Dan the man, just I can't get over that we have Ghosty on this roster. It is during the off season and during the matches, he's still always going to be the guy, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think you know, obviously like Ghosty, we I'm pretty sure every Thieves fan loves Ghosty right now. I know once it was like found out that Octane was retiring, I knew Ghosty was the guy I wanted on the team. Like I thought he
Agreed.
should be the very first player we go after, the first guy to build around. And once it came out that he was a lock on the team, I was like, all right, we're headed in the right direction already, and we haven't even
Hmm.
started playing matches yet. Obviously, the last major wasn't the best from the team perspective, but I think now with Nasty, he was another guy I thought the Thieves should pick up.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I thought he was going to get a roster spot no matter what. So seeing him not get a roster spot was really shocking to me. Um, and us not picking him up was a little shocking as well at first. Obviously, now we were able to pick him up, and I think that's going to be a good duo for the ARs. But I think the other positive with even this new roster change is that Ghosty and Kremp have teamed together, and Nasty and Afro have teamed together. So both of them
Hmm.
now have like a duo and some sort of chem that was already there, and it's not between like AR to AR or sub to sub, which I think is really good, to be able to have kind of like opposite roles, having that experience together. Because as we've mentioned before, like I felt like that was a little bit of the problem that the thieves the thieves team had before, like with comms and things like that, was certain players play styles and things like that, and so maybe like if comms are lacking but you have that kind of like just connection with a player, that might not be as bad. So I think having that, or both of those duos, I think is huge, especially going from a team who only had Afro and Cammy who had played together, and they'd only played together for a couple months, to now having basically two duos, who have had pretty good experiences with one another. So I'm really excited for this, and obviously with us getting this win, and then like we said, looking at the fact we have Minnesota coming up and them not really having the best split so far. Hopefully that will play in our favor. And then phase is obviously going to be rough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
if in some way we were able to beat phase, I mean, talk about a momentum boost. I think that would be insanely huge for the team.
Well, I
Um,
mean, we can even go back to qualifiers. Like we did, we played them very well that
yeah.
first time. It was, I believe it was either 3-2 or a close 3-0. Like each map was very, very close. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe now, like just like you said, we have the comms, we have the chem that we can build on. That first loss was a new roster against a top three team, and these are the teams that thieves are supposed to beat, right? If you're a top team, you're supposed to beat the bottom tier teams. And, as much as Miami is reeling, they still are the 7th seed right now out of the 12 teams. So you
Mm-hmm.
did bump yourself up in the standings a little bit with those 10 CDL points, and this is a decent team. So hopefully we can build on this and we can see that chem start to go not just between the pairs of players, but between all four players. I think Ghosty and Nasty is a very good AR duo, especially with Nasty.
Mm-hmm.
He's only had 2 games or 2 matches in the CDL this season. So
Yeah.
hopefully they can build on that the rest of this major, and we can see a much better placement in the standings and at LAN.
Yeah. I think you know with this new roster, even being in the building and getting to see them kind of like interact with each other, uh, it it felt like they have some pretty good chem already, um, and I think with the new update, I think that gave the thieves a little bit of an advantage to kind of get that little bit of a reset, that in a way every team kind of had to have, just based off of the gameplay itself. I think that that might have helped the team, coming into this new major, and obviously we had a really tough first matchup. That's why I really didn't want to put too much weight into that match, because you're going up against Optic, who they have a lot of really good veteran players, championship caliber team. Like you can't really base everything off of that first match. So I think
Yeah,
this Heretics match was a really good, test for them to see where they kind of really are at, or maybe where they're headed. Because as we said, Heretics has been an up and down team, and when they're up, they're really good. When they're down, they're not great. So I felt like this wasn't really a bad series from Heretics either. So I think
no,
that's kind of the plus side of this win, is that we saw the Thieves beat, um, you know, a
I think I
not
think
bad
Miami
Heretics
had.
team.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Miami has a good team. I don't think that they're great. I think that if they're top 6, top 8, I think they're on the lower half, which they're at 7 right now. I think that they had a pretty bad series out of Eric Boom, and that contributed to the Thieves win, but also we had a fantastic team series. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
overall, that should give the team confidence. And I hope that we see that from them, that, like, almost kind of like, oh, thank God we finally won. Now we can get that monkey off our back. I would compare it to like baseball when players need extra RBI or an extra home run to get to some stat. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's what the Thieves were maybe experiencing a little bit. Like, of course, your new roster, you're playing Optic. That's always tough. And then you go and play a Miami team that is good. They played us
Yeah.
well in all five. 4 out of the 5 games, and you could see from Dan like the absolute resilience that they had in that first map, and he let it all out at the end. Like, they know what's at stake, they know what they're trying to compete for, and it's great to see that. And now that, like, we see that they do care, they are winning, and that we want to build on that. And I think that they're playing together outside of the game, they're playing together all the time, they're hanging out at the compound, like
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to buy into the culture, and it's really great to see.
Yeah. And, I really hope um, that this is also the start of kind of showing that this is the team to ride with. Obviously, it's only been one series win, so it might be a little too early.
Yeah, sure.
But I think, as we talked about, just with how the team played as a whole in this series alone compared to how they have been playing in other series, is a huge step in the right direction. And that was why for me, I really wasn't, like too worried with what the outcome of this series was. But I think the fact that they won it should kind of like boost them up that much more, knowing that they're making improvements. And then you not only make the improvements, but now you have a way to prove it, like statistically. Whereas, before they kept saying, like, we feel like we're a much better team than what is being shown. And now they actually have that physical proof of we just improved and we actually won a series. Um,
Yep,
and
I
hopefully they
agree.
can take that into the next couple series. At the very least, with the phase series, I would love to just see a really competitive match again. If that's a series that we lose, I don't think it's really like a heartbreaker. Um, but as long as they were to be competitive in it and continue to show that improvement in each game mode and more specifically hardpoint, as a fan, I would love to see that because I try to keep a level head and not just get upset over we lost today. Like like you said earlier, we got to make cuts. Like no, I try to look at the deeper side of it and say, okay, the team is making improvements. That's all we can really ask for. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, as we said before, we have a tough split, so can't be too upset if we have like a rough outcome. But I think based on how we're seeing other teams play right now and how the Thieves played that map, we might have a better chance of having a better split this time than we did on the last one.
And just like you said, like the previously we were playing great in scrims, but we couldn't translate it.
Mm-hmm.
Now this win does give the players confidence to be like, okay, what we're doing works. We are doing the right things on the map. We're practicing the right way. Like, we know what we're doing, and it shows. And now we just have to build on that. We can keep, it's not every map we have to go back to the drawing board because we can't win a damn hard point. We
Mm-hmm.
can we can look at that and be like, okay, both of these hard points against a decent team, we were competitive. We won the first one and we barely lost the second one. Both games were 20-point, 30-point games. So it's nice to see that teams or that Thieves are being able to finally translate that into a map win.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, to me at this point, if there's anybody that is in the chat and has some questions that you guys would like to be answered, I know I am more than willing to answer some of these questions. Um, it's not like I'm on the team. I don't have any like deep insight, but if there's some stuff that we didn't talk about that you would like us to talk about, um, you know, more than more than welcome to type in the chat and give us any questions that you may or may not have. Uh, Otherwise, personally, I don't think I have too much else to talk about with this series. And I know last stream we kind of talked about what's to come with this team. So I really don't think I personally have too much. If you have any other thoughts as well, we can talk about that too.
Uh, Looks like Retros
Yeah,
wants
retro.
to have us talk about the roster a little bit more, which we just finished up on. But personally, I'm very confident in the roster. I think that the Ghosty Nasty AR duo is going to be really good moving forward. I think Kremp is getting a little bit of the new guy syndrome with coming back into the league. I think he's going to have to fix his pacing. Because fundamentals from challengers to the CDL is completely different, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
he's just having a little bit of a hard time adjusting with that.
Yeah,
Um, what about you?
I agree. I think this new AR duo is going to be huge, especially when you look at the style of game this is. We've had a lot of sub heavy games the last couple years, and I think this is the first one that is a little more AR dominant, um, just based on a lot of maps and power positions and things like that. So having another more consistent AR player alongside Ghosty, I think is huge.
Yep.
Um, and as I mentioned before, kind of like the double duos that we have now with Afro and Nasty and Ghosty and Kremp, I think is a big thing as well. Um, and with kind of like what you mentioned with Kremp being like the new guy, that was something that the Thieves had actually talked about in their last podcast, the Off the Radar one that they did before their team change.
Hmm.
They had talked about how there is a really big difference in kind of like the flow of like the CDL level competition, and maybe that's something that he's just kind of trying to figure out as well. Obviously, this is only his second series on the team, so I think that is something that will kind of start to fall into place. Um, I've even heard that personality wise, that he's kind of been compared a little bit to Draza. So
Good. That's what
as
we need.
yeah, as a fan and seeing how the Thieves were able to kind of grow Draza into what he is now, I think if they can do something similar like that with Kremp, um, we really have the opportunity to kind of grow from within, which I think is the best route. That's something that the Toronto Ultra did, and obviously Envoy was the one guy they picked up, but
Yeah.
they've basically grown from within, and they have been one of the best teams in the league since its inception.
Yeah. I think you can even look at the other 100T competitive esports teams with Val and LCS. Like their
Mm-hmm.
LCS roster is honestly shocking people with how good it is,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's fantastic to see from a development standpoint, that they know what they're doing, that this roster or a roster of young malleable talent
Mm-hmm.
can be molded into a winning team, and I think that's what we have right now. I think the last thing before we maybe finish up would be what I'll give you one. What map and mode would you like to see against Rocker next week?
um what map and mode? Well, I mean, maybe it's a little uh biased just because of this experience that we just had, but I mean, either a Karachi S&D or a Karachi Hardpoint, not looking too bad after that series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's hard to say just because I've been a little behind on like a lot of the other teams' matches. I haven't been too like in tune with how they play on different maps and all that kind of stuff. I've mostly been focused on the Thieves just because the time to watch all of the matches has been rough with work and things like that. So I've mostly been focused on the Thieves. Um, but from what I've seen from them, I think a really Karachi seems to be kind of like their best overall map. Um, I think Invasion Hardpoint, there's just it's such a toss up. Um, with spawns and things like that. Um, whereas Karachi is a little more like set. So I think
Hmm.
Karachi for hardpoint is not bad for them because, as I said before, that was a map that even when they were losing, they were still playing it the best out of all of their hardpoints. And now we actually have a win on that map under our belt. And then their Karachi search and destroy, I feel like, has been pretty good so far, regardless. So
Yeah.
that's obviously a good one as well. And then just with the control, I feel like obviously they banned invasion, so invasion's probably not their best control map anymore. But outside of that, I feel like they've just been a pretty solid control team in general. That I don't feel like it's like any map is necessarily out of the cards.
I think they can square up with almost any team on control, and it's either going to be a competitive loss or a win. I think
Yeah,
that's what we've seen thus far from every person on this roster, that they do get control. And that, I mean, that was what we talked about earlier, is like,
mm-hmm.
why can they do so well in control but not hard point? So, and we won't open that can of worms again, but I think that you're right. Like, their control is solid regardless of the map.
Yeah. Retro also asked, what expectations do I have for the Rocker match?
I'll go 3-2 LAT. I think that it'll be a game 5 collapse again from Rocker, and I will absolutely love to see it.
I I definitely think it depends on how the first hard point plays out. I think the
Sure.
first hard point will kind of set the tone for the Thieves. Just even though we won a hard point here and we had a close one, um, I think that's still going to be in the back of their mind that their hard point is not where it needs to be. Um, so I do think it kind of depends on the first map, but I think the Thieves could either win it 3-1 or 3-2. I think it'll be a longer series. I don't think they'll get smoked, but I also don't think they'll smoke Rocker either. So um, I think if if they win the first hard point, I think they go 3-1. I think if they lose it, they go 3-2.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Because I think they have a chance to win a second hard point, but I just think that first hard point really sets a tone up.
Yeah. I will say too, like, even just projecting a little bit with the next series, like, even now with them, let's say they come out and they get blown out in the first hard point.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like we're already going to be down 0-2 going into control. Like, we can bounce back in the surge, we can bounce back in control, and then we know that our hard point looks better and that it is something that hopefully they're going to work on, and that we can translate that into a win. So I think that if they come out and they get smoked in the first hard point, it could still be a 3-1. But
Yeah, and I mean we have another full week of scrims. Maybe
yeah.
they will get some more things figured out in hard point and map pool and things like that. So I definitely have faith in the team to kind of get some more stuff figured out and be a little more prepared going into the next series. So I hope this win really, really helps them mentally to go into their next couple maps prepared.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're on the right track and that this is going to be a fun roster to watch for the rest of the season if they continue to play this way.
Yeah, and as a fan, I feel like that's something that I would be happy with at the very least, especially with the fact that going into the year we knew this was going to be a completely brand new roster, probably a new environment, like just with new players on the team, a new dynamic. Um, you know, I don't think a lot of people were expecting this team to be very good, and so to me, anytime they can really do something above the expectations, I really can't complain. Just kind of based on how this year was set up initially. Obviously, I'm still gonna have high hopes for the team. I am a fan, and I feel like I try to be very like I can't think of the word, but very positive. I try to have a very
Optimistic.
positive. Yeah, I try to be very optimistic with the team. So I'm gonna I'm sure they hold themselves to a high standard. I'm still going to hold them to a high standard. But at the end of the day, if, you know, as long as they're competitive and they're making series interesting, um, to me, that's kind of where I expected the season to be. So if they're going above that, I mean, there's going to be no complaints from me.
Yeah, I think too. It needs to be said that making a roster change is never easy, and the
Yeah.
fact that they jumped out ahead of almost everybody else, and they were like, "We need to make a two-man change immediately
Mm-hmm.
before the talent pool goes down." I know Parasite's a big proponent of that. Like, you need to go out and get the talent while it's still there, and I
Yeah.
think that is very obvious with the Brezzy pickup. Like, I don't think Brezzy's a bad player. I just don't think Seattle needed a player like Brezzy,
Mm-hmm.
but we got the guys that we wanted, and then I think that teams that wait longer and longer, they're not going to have that opportunity. And I think that that's something that should be praised by for the Thieves camp, because they did the right thing.
Yeah. I completely agree. Hopefully, um, as we said, we see the improvement so we don't get another Cold War season with all the roster changes. That would not be fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that
from
was a rough year.
at least from this first series, or these first two series, I really don't think that'll be the case. So we'll see how the rest of it goes. But I'm definitely excited for these upcoming matches. Um, we I will be watching them hopefully live. It'll really all depend on my work schedule, but if I'm able to watch them live, I will be doing so. I will be giving some more updates again on Twitter, and then after the weekend is done, I will go live again, and hopefully, if you're available as well, we can keep this ball rolling, keep coming on and talking about the matches, um,
Yeah,
and
I'm happy
all the stats.
to tag along. I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I'll be getting a new PC here. I think it'll probably arrive this week, if not maybe early next week, and I'll be able to start doing some editing and some design work to spruce up the ThievesTalk stuff, so that way we can get some overlays with a second camera in there, and hopefully
Yeah.
I'll get that worked on, because I do have some background in some of that stuff. Just my PC is about 5 years old, so
Okay. Yeah. I mean that's great. You know I was able to create this graphic, but I don't do any like motion graphics or anything like that. So I have no control over anything like that. I'm not good
no,
at
no,
that. But
I don't. I'm not
um,
trying to dunk on you or anything. I'm just
no,
saying,
no,
like,
you're
I'm excited to get working on it with you.
yeah, yeah. I would love to do all that. Um, and I'm excited to chat about the next match. Hopefully, it's another one that goes in our favor. I think that makes the overall experience even better. So excited for next week, and hopefully we can figure out a time to get both of us back on here again.
Yeah, our next match is Sunday at. So we have the late window again, and so it'll be 6 Eastern is when the game plays. So
Okay.
whenever you're available, or the following day works for me. I'm pretty much open whenever.
Sounds good. I will definitely keep in touch with you on that then, so we can get all that figured out. But I appreciate you coming on again. It's great getting to chat with you and have a long conversation about the thieves, because, like I said last time, I could go on and on when
Yeah,
it
I
comes to the
agree.
thieves. So it's great to have somebody else to talk with, for the thieves.
Absolutely, man. Well, I won't take any more of your time. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good, man. Hope you have a good rest of your night.
You too, buddy. Bye.
Bye. All right. I want to give a shout out to some of the people who followed while we were kind of deep in our dialogue here. So thank you, Lazy Aspects. It was great meeting you the other day. That was really cool. Definitely the first person to recognize me for running the ThievesTalk account, which I thought was really funny. Something I definitely didn't expect. So I really appreciate that. Reteach, thank you for the follow. And Kazi, that's my brother. So thank you for tuning in. and he's telling me to hop on COD. Well, we'll see. Appreciate you all for tuning in. I'm gonna try and get this uploaded hopefully onto YouTube either tomorrow or Tuesday. So that way anybody who missed it will get to see it. And yeah, if you're not already following the ThievesTalk Twitter account, go ahead and give that a follow. The @ is just ThievesTalk, and I try to post as many live updates as I can on anything Thieves really. So whether it's match days or just any more news or notifications, I try to do that. I'm also thinking about doing some just kind of like trivia stuff. Like maybe I'll just post a random like trivia thing about the Thieves, just to see if what other Thieves fans' knowledge is and stuff like that. But I'm still working on a lot of things, and I'm hoping to continue to see some of this improvement with quality and with your guys' help, giving me some feedback and things like that. I will continue to try and keep up in the game. So I appreciate you all for tuning in, and I'm excited for next week. Excited for the rest of this season. Like I said, the Thieves are looking a little better, and I think we have some good stuff on the horizon. So I'm really excited for all that. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you all next week for the next Thieves Talks podcast. Peace out.